The seahorse looks like a souvenir, or like the fantasy of a designer who overdid it. But in nature, it is not an ornament. He's a quiet hunter. This is a detail of the Food Network, and this is a living indicator of the condition of the coastal sea. Take away the seahorses and the ocean won't collapse with a crash, but you will see something else. Grass meadows are getting poorer, local connections are breaking, and one of the most accurate signals that something is wrong with the coastal ecosystem is disappearing. Let's take it apart now. 10 features, 1 hidden effect, and 10 facts that are really worth paying attention to. Seahorses are fish, but very strange fish. They swim poorly, hold on to the support with their tail, hunt from ambush, eat mainly small crustaceans and other small animals, and males develop a real pregnancy in the brood pouch. And here's the key point. The seahorse is usually not the king of the ecosystem, but an accurate working element, not a bulldozer, more like a jewelry cog. But without such cogs, the sea turns into a crooked structure. Go. 10 functions of seahorses in nature. 1. Control of small crustaceans and other micro-mining. Seahorses are secondary consumers. They eat mainly small crustaceans, amphipods, copepods, mysids, as well as fry and other small invertebrates that fit into their tubular mouths. This makes them part of the control of small coastal fauna. Roughly speaking, a seahorse is not a beautiful stick with a tail. This is a small ambush vacuum cleaner for small things. 2. Energy transfer from micro-life to large predators. Skates themselves serve as prey for larger fish, rays, seabirds, and other predators, especially in the early stages of life. That is, they raise energy from tiny prey higher up the food chain. This is a classic but important function. Ate a microcosm leads to become food for someone bigger. 3. Participation in the food webs of seagrasses, mangroves, and reefs. Seahorses are closely related to seagrasses, mangrove roots, algae, and coral structures. In these habitats, they do not just live in the background, but enter the local predator-prey network and add another level of trophic connections. That is, a skate is not a part of life in general of the sea, but rather of structural, shallow water. 4. Local stabilization of the micro-community through ambush predation. Skates are not worn in the water area. They stay in small areas and often stay close to the supports. Because of this settlement, their influence is especially local. They constantly put pressure on the microfauna in their small area. This is not a sledgehammer blow. This is a constant point pressure. 5. The link between the floating trifle and bottom life. Many of their victims are associated either with the bottom zone, or with vegetation, or with planktonic drift in the early stages. The seahorse catches this little thing at the very structure of the environment: grasses, roots, algae, corals. In fact, it helps to transfer the products of the microcosm into the fish channel of the Food Network. 6. Support for biodiversity as a separate functional group. In coastal systems, not only large and conspicuous fish are important. Seahorses represent a very peculiar functional group: sedentary, grasping, ambush, structure-dependent fish with male pregnancy. Such a variety of life strategies in itself increases the functional complexity of the community. In simple words, the more different ways to live a community has, the more resistant it is to the strangeness of reality. 7. Indicators of the state of coastal habitats. This is one of the most reliably proven roles. Seahorses are particularly vulnerable to environmental degradation because they are tied to complex habitats and often have a high loyalty to the site. Therefore, their abundance and presence reflect well the condition of seagrasses, mangroves, algae, and reef areas. If the skates disappear, often the problem is not the skates themselves. The problem is that Wednesday has already gone the wrong way. 8. Indicators of fragmentation and destruction of the coastal landscape. Due to the small home area and weak swimming, seahorses do not cope well with the abrupt destruction of the environment. They are not the kind of fish that will quickly rebuild life anywhere. Therefore, they are especially clearly visible when the habitat is torn, mowed down, clouded, or simplified. 9. Contribution to the local circulation of substances. Like other small predatory fish, seahorses process prey biomass and return substances to the system through metabolism, excretion, and their own mortality. This is not a skate-only superfunction, but a common but real part of the food network's work. The ecosystem is generally based on the fact that someone ate someone and turned it into the next floor of life. 10. Maintaining local population stability through the high parental contribution of the male. In seahorses, males carry offspring in a pouch where the embryos receive protection, gas exchange, and osmoregulation. This is not a function for the whole sea directly, but an important function for the sustainability of populations themselves in a complex, predatory coastal environment. And sustainable local populations are already part of a sustainable ecosystem. One unexpected effect that is often overlooked. The most underrated thing about a seahorse is not the pregnancy of a male. Although, of course, she's pretty crazy in her own right, the main hidden effect is different. The seahorse shows the quality of the environment better than it seems. Why? Because he does not swim well, sits on a small area, depends on the complex structure of the environment, and does not like when the structure is broken. In other words, a horse is not just a participant in the ecosystem, it is also a litmus test of the coastal sea. It's not because he's moody, it's because he's too honest. If the place is bad, he will show it quickly. 10 unusual facts about seahorses. 1. A seahorse is a fish, but without the usual fish logic. It doesn't have the typical body shape of many fish. It floats vertically, and its body is covered with bony plates rather than ordinary scales. 2. The male really gets pregnant. The female transfers the eggs to the male's brood pouch, where fertilization and further development take place. The embryos there have protection, gas exchange, and regulation of salt balance. 3. Seahorses don't have a full stomach. Because of this, food passes quickly, and skates have to eat often. Hence their almost constant hunting for small prey. 4. They have no teeth. They don't chew their prey. They suck it into their tubular mouths with a quick blow. 5. They are very bad swimmers. They move due to their small dorsal fin and steering with their pectoral fins, and therefore often hold on to the support with their tail. This is one of the reasons for their strong attachment to the place. 6. They have a prehensile tail. It's not an ornament. They use them to cling to seagrasses, corals, algae, and other supports so that they don't get swept away by the current. 7. Many species are very faithful to the site. Many of the studied species have a high loyalty to the place and a small home area, especially during the breeding season. 8. They do have monogamy, but not all of them. Some species do exhibit stable pairs, but it is impossible to make this a rule for all seahorses. This is an important clarification, so as not to turn biology into a postcard. 9. Juveniles are more vulnerable than adults. In adults, protection is better. Camouflage, bone plates, spikes in some species, but young skates are much more vulnerable and more likely to become prey. 10. There are dwarf species that disguise themselves almost insanely well. For example, dwarf seahorses can almost merge with gorgonians and other hosts. This is one of the best examples of marine camouflage. Conclusion. The seahorse is not a souvenir, and not just a beautiful oddity. These are a small coastal predator, part of the food webs of seagrasses, mangroves, and reefs, prey for larger animals, and a very accurate indicator of the state of the coastal environment. He is not necessarily the protagonist of the ecosystem, but he is one of those who shows how much the ecosystem is still alive and assembled. If it was useful, subscribe. Here we analyze the animals so that it becomes clear who really keeps nature in working order. And write in the comments. What surprised me the most was the male's pregnancy, or the fact that the seahorse works as a living indicator of the quality of the coastal sea.